Our church started in 1856, really, among French Canadians in the States. Even for Bishop Villat, he used the words Orthodox Old Catholic, both words together, or at some point, Orthodox Catholic Church. He used, that name. Although our original name is Christian Catholic Church. But Alvares was the main consecrator.
Yeah,
and he was consecrated according to the Western Rite, the Latin Rite. It was not the Orthodox liturgy. We've never used, an Orthodox liturgy or Orthodox vestment. We've always been Western. That's our tradition.
Welcome back to Orthodoxy Cognate page YouTube channel, and we are really happy to produce you and to bring in front of you another special episode of Orthodoxy Cognate page. Here we feature Most Reverend Serge A, Thériault of Christian Catholic Church of Canada, which is also known as Christian Catholic Rite of Community Churches, which is based in Canada, which have strong lineage from that of Bishop Renivirati Timotheos of United America. We all know more about, we have heard a lot about Bishop Renivirati Timotheos, about his work and his connections with Western Rite Catholic movements, even here in India and throughout the world. We have heard about those connections, and we have also heard about his connections with that of Metropolitan Alvares Julius of Goa and Ceylon. And here in this, we are really celebrating 100th anniversary of Metropolitan Alvares Julius of Goa and Ceylon. And as we OCP, as we have really put our work and our research, particularly related to our project, that of Mar Alvares Julius research project, which was there for 10 years, and where we were able to publish 2 volumes of Western Rite Orthodox churches, or Western Rites of Syrian Malankara Orthodox Church, which is published in 2 parts. And so related to all these connections with MARP, our OCP society is also related, and we have collaborations with the Christian Catholic Church in Canada. That's why today we are having Bishop Serge over here for a special interview with us. And first of all, I like to introduce a little bit about our special guest today. So Bishop Thériault is the 4th elected bishop of Christian Catholic Rite of Community Churches, and he's a fabulous person who is having interdisciplinary specialization. So he had his theological studies, and he had his studies in human sciences, in administration, in medicine, in education, and also he was also part of American Board of Medical Psychotherapist and Psychodiagnostics. And he's in Orthodox sense, we really see that he's the primate of the church, and we are really happy to have you here for this special interview. And for your introductory points, I really like to hear more about the church, about your church, about yourself, and how it's coming out at present, like in the present era.
Our church started in 1856, really, among French Canadians in the States, particularly the state of Illinois, in a village called St. Anne. And it came as a reformation of the Catholic faith centered on the sacrifice of Christ, the redemption, our redemption by Christ's sacrifice. And we had a priest in those years called Father Charles Shinnicky, and he became a real reformer, and he's the one who established the church. It was incorporated in 1859, and Bishop Villat, that you know, he was a missionary under Father Shinnicky. He joined the church and he was sent to Wisconsin to establish parishes among the French Canadians who were living there. There were also Belgians living there in the Door Peninsula. It's at the north of Green Bay, and he established at least four churches there. And they didn't have a bishop because Father Shinnicky didn't want a bishop for the church. So the idea of a bishop came in Wisconsin among the parishioners of Father Villat. And they've elected a bishop in 1889. There was a synod in Duval at the Church of St. Mary, and it was November the 16th. And they were in contact with the old Catholics in Switzerland at the time. So we've always used the Swiss liturgy, Swiss catechism, and we've been very influenced by the old Catholic movement, in these first years in Wisconsin. And Bishop Villat was sent to Bern. He was trained at the old Catholic faculty in Bern by Dr. Michaud, who was the dean at the time, and also by Bishop Edward Herzog, who was the bishop of the Swiss Old Catholics. And Bishop Villat's first training was at McGill University in Montreal. He studied at the Presbyterian College 2 years of theology, and then in Wisconsin he was sent to Nashotah House Seminary, where he completed his training in Anglo-Catholicism, under the Anglican influence. And so in 1889, they wanted to have a bishop of their own because they were French-speaking, these people, and they were under an Anglican bishop who worked as a visitor for them. He was, making confirmation, but everything in English. They wanted to have confirmation in French to be able to ordain people. And so that's how the idea of having our own bishop started to circulate in the church. And at the time, we had a priest by the name Bernard Harding. He was a former Benedictine, and he joined our jurisdiction, and he served the 3 parishes in Wisconsin. One of them was St. Mary, and also he served St. Louis, King of France, in Green Bay. And he was also sent to St. Joseph in Walheim, which is another parish in Wisconsin. And he had been teaching in Ceylon, in Sri Lanka, at the St. Bernard Seminary that was under the care of the Oblates of Mary Immaculate Fathers. So he knew about Alvarez. He knew about the Padroado independent movement. So he is the one who told the board of trustees and Father Villat, who was then bishop-elect, that maybe he would find communion with these independent Catholics in Ceylon, because there were many similarities between us. We were also a move away from Rome Catholic movement, we were very adverse to this authoritarian attitude of the Roman Church, and we were experiencing persecution, like Father Alvares in Ceylon. So when the correspondence started in 1890, Bishop Velat, who was a priest then, he wrote to the Archbishop of the Roman Church in Colombo. His name was the Most Reverend Christopher Bonjan. And he was asking about Harding, if the information he was giving was true, that he went there and that he knew this movement. So he responded to the letter and confirmed everything. So through Harding, correspondence started with the Independent Catholic Church of Ceylon and south of India. And that's how, through correspondence, they found out they had a lot in common. Because Bishop Villet was also a good preacher, like Alvarez. He was also concerned with agriculture, education, medicine, healthcare. He founded an orphanage in Chicago. So, the bonds were very strong between the two. So he went there in 1891. And he spent a year there, and he did ministry in Colombo at the Church of Our Lady of Good Death. He did weddings there. He said mass. So far, Velat was very involved in Colombo with the people. So he got the idea, the spirit of Western Rite, among the people. So when he came, and then he was consecrated, as you know, on May the 29, 1892, at the Church of Our Lady of Good Death. And the co-consecrator were Saint Gregory of Parumela, and also there was another co-consecrator.
Co-consecrated included Paulos Athanasios of Kottayam.
Exactly. But Alvarez was the main consecrator.
Yeah,
and he was consecrated according to the Western Rite, the Latin Rite. It was not the Orthodox liturgy. We've never used, an Orthodox liturgy or Orthodox vestment. We've always been Western. That's our tradition. And so he met many people there. He came very close to the consul for the USA, who was there. And he was also very, very close to a physician by the name Pinto. Pinto was very involved in the independent Catholic movement. And so, as I said, they were, he got a real idea of what it is to be Western Rite. And when he came back to the States, he continued correspondence with Saint Gregory of Parumela, particularly, and also Archbishop Polycutil. You know that name, Polycutil. He was the Metropolitan.
He was the primate of the church during that particular period.
Okay.
And that's why the title for him was. Then we didn't have anything like Catholicos or Patriarchs over here, but our primate was called as Metropolitan of Malangara. So
Exactly.
Pulicotil Dionysius V was the Malangara Metropolitan, and in history we have read about all these things.
Okay. His secretary was his name was Philip. Philip also corresponded with Bishop Villa, but when he came back, persecution started. persecution by the Romans and also by the Anglicans. They didn't want a bishop, in the area. And he was abandoned by the old Catholics in Europe because they didn't want a bishop for the French people. They wanted us to be under the Anglicans. And it didn't work with our people because in those years it was not that clear that the Anglican Church is Catholic. Today it would not be maybe it would be a problem with the ordination of women and gay weddings and things like that, but the liturgy and the theology is more Catholic today, in the Anglican Church, but not in those years. And Bishop Villette was arguing with Philip. Philip, the Secretary of Policotil, was very, very in favor of the communion with the Anglicans. And Bishop Villette didn't agree. He was using the liturgy to prove that we don't have the same faith and everything. So I think that it didn't help, to maintain the communion. It was easier with Archbishop Alvares because they had so much in common. They tried together to use Father Ignatius in England to start a jurisdiction of sort. It didn't work there either because Ignatius wanted the Syriac Orthodox priesthood, but he wanted to stay Anglican, so that was very confusing. So Bishop Villette came back, and really, he's the one who developed the church as we know her today. His teaching, his fidelity to the faith of the ancient church, and he had the support of Father Shiniki. Even if Father Shiniki joined the Presbyterians, he didn't want bishops, but he accepted the succession of the Malankara Church because he founded everything on the Bible, and he said, when I read the Bible, it's clear that St. Peter was in Antioch, and that succession is biblical, and so it was very helpful for us. The relationship with the Indian Church has been a blessing for us. A blessing because the faith was the ancient faith, the sound faith, and also because of the Padroado movement, they understood our position. So from Bishop Villette, the ministry came to Quebec and to Ontario, and other churches were, established. One in Montreal, one in Maskinonge County, and also another one in Ontario on St. Joseph's Island. But when Father Villette retired in 1923, then difficulties started for us. Persecution was huge. And his successor was a medical doctor by the name Casimir Durand. He was a saintly man, but he was not a strong leader, so he was afraid, and the church became underground in the years 1930s. And when he passed in 1957, the church was had almost disappeared. It was mostly a lay movement under the management of his two twin sons that I had the chance to know, Paul and René Durand. So in 1970 in Quebec, there was a revival movement under a layman by the name O'Neill Cote, and we established relationship with the descendants of the families in Illinois and in Wisconsin, and the church was re-established under the influence of the old Catholics, because in 1956 in Hungary there was a revolution, and the bishop there of the Old Catholics, he had to leave Hungary. He was persecuted by the Communist Party, and he came to Montreal, and he helped us very, very much. He trained Father Cote, and he was ordained in 1973. And Father Cote was really the restorer of the church. When I joined the church, he was the bishop, and he consecrated me bishop, and I was trained by him beside the Dominicans and St. Paul's University and Bern. But my first training was under him. And he knew the history. So he passed it on to me, because the contact we had with these families was very, very helpful to maintain the church as it was. Because, there are many people in the world today claiming to have Bishop Villat succession, but they don't know who he was and what the theology was, because they canonized saints and things like that. They worship the Blessed Virgin Mary, Assumption, Immaculate Conception, things that don't make sense, in our tradition, which is consistent with the ancient Orthodox faith kept by the Malankara jurisdiction.
We have heard a brief history. I mean, I was really enthusiastic to hear from you the whole history from the ancient time to the present. But even if we really talk about history, even if we talk about the succession from Metropolitan Alvares or from Metropolitan Timotheos, we have heard people really having some confusions over when we start to use the term Western Rite. So, how can we make them to understand this particular term, Western Rite, and how easily can we define the term Western Rite, and nowadays when people really relates to Western Rite, or when people really tries to read about Western Rite, they will really think, we have seen a trend that they really thinks that it's just the Catholic faith. But it's much more than that. So as a teacher, as a historian, how will you define the term Western Rite, and what's its scope, the real scope of the term, the idea, and if you can talk a little bit about its origin to the idea of Western Rite, that will be really helpful for our viewers.